Bom, então, bom dia mais uma vez. Vamos ter novamente o Roger e o Jack Page a fazer uma apresentação. Nesta feita, uma Masterclass SOUNDSCAPE pelo mundo. Eles pedem para que, se pudessem chegar-se mais à frente, para a esquerda e para a direita, seria melhor, teria uma melhor experiência, porque eles vão fazer uma experiência convosco. Se puderem, então, chegar-se mais à frente, agradecíamos. Para a esquerda e para a direita, aqui nestas filas iniciais, se não se importarem. Que é para depois poderem tirar partido da escuta que daí vai resultar. Pode ser? Então vamos ouvir Roger, mais uma vez, Roger Rios e Jack Page. Até já.
Welcome again. Let's wait some time. Who was the breakfast? Yeah, who was okay? That's fine.
Have you got the clicker?
The clicker is here. Yeah. Thank you very much, Theo. Let's start the session 2. Remember, we did what soundscape, now soundscape around the world, and tomorrow we will talk about how to use soundscape, and then we will have this masterclass about David Shepard. We won't just introduce and then Jack could explain everything, but I just want to say that to not keep boring, we will try to do like a dynamic session. That means we will talk a lot about what's going on in terms of soundscape around the world, but also we will try to do some experiments with you. This is why it's nice that you be more here, if it's possible. I think it's okay, but if the people from behind want us to use, there is some rows here. That means it will be nice also to perceive those experiments. And then we could start.
Yes, great. So yes, thanks Roger. So yeah, in this session, the idea was to just kind of go on a bit of a whistle-stop tour around the world and to hopefully inspire you with some ways of thinking about how soundscape's used, but also perhaps how you might want to use this kind of technology for your performances or your shows or anything that you're designing yourself as well. So yeah, like Roger said, we'll without being able to take you to the shows, which of course you'd be welcome to do, we want to try and not just bore you with pictures and telling you about various places, but try and make it a little bit more interesting as well. So there will be some pictures. There will be a little bit of some videos to watch as well, and we will also try and do a little experiment as well, just to help explain some of the principles that we've been talking about. So yeah, it's also probably going to be a little bit shorter than the last presentation, which means you can get to lunch a bit quicker, which is always nice. So yeah, what is the landscape of soundscape? So the first thing to mention is that we have a whole bunch of facilities across the world. So we have at least 28 demo facilities. And these are mostly located in the D&B offices. So D&B Audiotechnik has offices around the world. And in most of them we have a soundscape system. And we also try to make that available for demonstrations, education, but also if you're an artist or a sound designer, give you access to these spaces for you to be able to experiment and to create and explore soundscape and your own work as well. Right now there's been somewhere in the world around of kind of 140 installations, so these are kind of fixed installations across the world, be it from classical theatres to contemporary performing arts venues and beyond, and something around 180 productions that are utilising soundscape. So again, this could be musical, theatre, classical, various types. So we'll have a little quick look at some of these examples. There's, again, don't want to read out a big list of names. We are going to take a little kind of deep dive into Bjork's cornucopia at the Shed and talk at this point a little bit about how soundscape can be scaled and thinking about taking one performance but different venues of different sizes, different shapes, etc., and some of those challenges as well. Across Europe, Middle East and Africa, again, a whole bunch of venues and performances. We'll also touch on MJ the Musical, And again, more examples across Asia Pacific as well. Hopefully you can see this all right. This, again, we're just going to have a quick look at perhaps some of these kind of flagship venues. So this is a place called Austria Gaswerk. It's in Denmark. And this is really interesting because it was built in an abandoned gasometer, so where they stored gas. So it's this big domed shaped building. And what they've done there is they've installed a soundscape system, a complete 360 system, as well as being able to completely projection map across the whole space as well. And the creative director there calls this Theatre Max. So it's really kind of taking this concept of traditional theatre, but really maximizing the impact it can have on the audience. So spaces like this will also produce their own shows that then can be toured to other places, as well as receive performances as well. King's Place in London, we've mentioned this already, and we'll touch on a bit more detail in this later. This is a picture of Hall 1, where you can see them capturing the on-space impulse responses. And again, another example from the UK, this is a place called Lily Dory. So this was really the kind of brainchild of the Duchess of Northumbria. So yes, in England we have the royal family and various dukes and duchesses which own land, and she had this idea where she wanted to create this really magical world for children, and she kind of set her own brief, which was to make sure that nobody took their phones out. So really her idea about this was that the world could be so magical and so engaging that it wasn't about taking your phone out, it was about being in the space, in the time. And to do that, it was really important that there was a way of translating a story without there being actors or without there being actual fairies or pixies and trolls. In this example, I'm not saying they don't exist, but in this example, they were not really there. So the sound was used to tell the story. So this was really crucial. And the example you heard earlier of the footsteps and the water and the buzzing bee, that was actually made as part of a demonstration for the Duchess in her castle, where we actually went to do a demo, for her to experience soundscape for the first time and for her to understand how you need technology like this to actually be able to tell the story and to make this world become believable. This is an example from Japan, where we've got this very substantial system. It includes our KSL line arrays, which is one of our largest line arrays, and they were really interested in kind of having a future-proof system, so obviously a very large-scale format. This is one of the oldest theatres in Berlin, in Germany as well, where they upgraded and wanted a system that would stand the test of time. And
yeah,
similar example is in Sydney.
Can I add
yes.
something?
Previous slide.
Here is quite a good an example of how like an old room, like let's say a classical one, that you might know that sometimes it's quite difficult to put some loudspeaker in it because the statics of the room, it's quite difficult. You cannot, you can, first of all, you cannot hang wherever you want. That's the first. And second one, if the loudspeaker is quite big, then someone from the place will say, no, you cannot put the loudspeaker there because this interferes negatively with the statics of the place. This is why soundscape also takes in place, since we can reinforce with, yeah, we need more loudspeakers, but those loudspeakers are smaller. That means then visually this has less effect. And also the resultant, or the resultant thing, or the what you achieve is something quite interesting, because with less small loudspeaker, or with more loudspeaker with less bigger, then you can achieve the same results. And this is a benefit, and also it helps to put soundscape in those kinds of places. And the result, as you can see here, you cannot see the loudspeaker. There are no line arrays, there are no big systems, it's just small ones, and it goes fine. Yeah, sorry, Jack.
It's a very good point, and you mentioned about different departments often fighting each other. So it's
Yeah,
often
for sure.
the sound department, the lighting department, the sound system's getting in the way. I guess that's why the lighting workshops was yesterday and the day before.
That's the system reality.
Yeah. But that's often the way. It's often a compromise. And for example, this situation in Sydney where they don't have 5 positions. They've still stuck with the left, centre, right arrays, but also there is a 360 system across all 3 balconies in the space as well. And this is the kind of place which will have rock and roll concerts, but it will also have classical concerts and orchestral concerts as well. So having to fit multiple briefs with one system as well is often the challenge. We mentioned this idea before as well, but thinking about houses of worship, so particularly in America as well, you can often get quite large congregations, and the challenge and the need for that person at the front of the stage to, one, of course, be heard, but 2, be engaging, and for every member of that congregation to believe what's being said. And so this is where soundscape can be used, soundscape in combination perhaps with on-space as well. If we think about places of worship, traditionally they are often in equivalents of churches where there are large reverberation times, and historically that was used to help amplify the person at the front before there were loudspeakers there. So thinking again about how we can use this technology to be engaging and inspire as well, and connect with whoever's at the front talking with the audience.
And also it's quite nice, just to extend and to explain something, with this church that you told that they are big. Imagine several centuries years ago when those churches were built, and they use the technology they have at that moment. That means the technology that they have is good architects and stone and how to build it up and make those bigger, but this was the technology that they had in that moment. And now those places also are using the state-of-the-art of technology in order to the same objective, the same goal, the voice of God. It's like you need to transfer this feeling and to engage, as Jack said, the people. And you're using all the tools that you have around you. And this means not only big screens, not only good musicians, also to use the immersive technology, let's say the last or the top technology, the top immersive technology in order to achieve what you're looking for. Yeah.
And no, that's great. And
but that means there are like many years between the church and now, but we're still doing the same, using as much technology as we have in order to go in this direction. Yeah.
And last but not least, Portugal's own soundscape installation in the south, in Tavira, Antonio Pinheiro venue. So if you want to ask more about this, speak to the team from NAN, but I think this is an example as well as to how soundscape can also be competitive but also collaborative with other technologies as well. So this, I think they use Dolby Atmos in combination with soundscape. So the two separate briefs can be met with the one system as well.
And it's quite nice because when you need to make this kind of project where you need to mix different technologies, that those technologies are immersive technologies but are completely different approach and have nothing to compare. It's what I said in the very beginning, that remember you in experience, which was your experience in terms of immersive, and that means immersive means everything and at the same time means nothing. And this is why put together those technologies, it's quite an effort, but also it's a case to explain how soundscape is flexible in order to be part of another let's say, too much flexible like Dolby Atmos, where it's quite fixed by Dolby Dolby, which are the requirements that you need. But then if you can find a balance, then you have at the end a room here in Portugal. I think it's the first soundscape installation here in Portugal, a fixed one, where you can play both systems. You can reproduce a video, a film with a Dolby Atmos technology, and then at the same time you can play a concert using soundscape and do immersive in real time.
So next up we'll just have a quick little flick through some images of some productions that have happened. The first one we can talk about, or Roger, you could talk about this one in Spain.
Yep.
You're involved with.
This is quite a nice example. This happened 2 years ago. Was in the Christmas season, and this is an orchestra that used to play in a cathedral, in a big place. And for some, I think they had in this year, this was like a typical, like recurrent event that happens every year, and the people wanted to go there, like the Vienna, you know, the Waltz in Vienna, something like this. But for some reason, this year they didn't have the possibility to go to the church. I think they happened something, and they need to move to the theater at the same city. And we thought, the feeling will be completely different. How we can reproduce the like we are in the church. This is why they put a lot of projectors in order to recreate like how do you call it this in English? The screens with colors.
The stained glass windows.
Yeah, okay, you know what I mean. And they wanted to reproduce exactly the same. Also, they put a soundscape system in order to recreate. I suppose they are not using the San Vitello church because it's quite long, but maybe they use some kind of N space, also N scene, and also what they did, and this was so funny, they burned some kind of, how do you call it, the incense in order to feel exactly the same. That means immersive could be at this point. That means immersive, it also smell at what this place smell. And also because I think this is the sense that goes directly to the brain. That means there is no processor inside, and that means the combination of all those immersive tools, let's say, brings at the end with an amazing concert in the theater. Yeah.
This example's the Aurora Orchestra, and this was a show in London. This venue is not a typical venue. It was an old print works. It's called the print works. So where they had all of the big machines and the printing press. This was very acoustically treated because it had to be when the big machines were in action and making lots of noise. And for this particular orchestra, as you can kind of see in the picture, they are spread across the whole venue, and the audience was invited to walk around the different sections. So there were a couple of challenges there. One was how can we overcome the fact that this was a very dead space, which orchestras typically like to use the reverberation of a room to monitor themselves. So the orchestra needed something to help them, and also the audience needed something to make it sound a lot more realistic. So what we did was we placed loudspeakers around the whole space and just used on space to create what we call a virtual acoustic shell. So it was a little bit like, dumping one of our modelled rooms, one of our concert halls, into this space to give the sensation of being in a real concert hall. And of course, so it helped the musicians because there's that element of first reflections due to the on-space engine. So the string section were able to monitor the double bass section just from those late reflections that they were hearing, a little bit like they would in a real example. And of course, the audience that were able to weave around had a much better experience as well. Kagami, this is a show that went on a world tour. This is a VR show, so it was in the round like you can see, but all of the audience members were wearing a headset, and there was a visual representation of Sakamoto, the pianist, performing in the middle of the space, and soundscape was used to make the auditory experience feel real as well. So yeah, kind of starting to see more of this kind of new technologies with regards to augmented reality as well, and soundscape perhaps being used to assist that experience as well. And another example, we talked earlier about kind of hybrid systems, so not necessarily having to have lots of loudspeakers across the front of the stage. Houghton Festival in the UK is an electronic music festival, so thinking about the kind of content that is coming through the stages, a lot of the time it was just stereo content. And perhaps needing to localize sound on the stage wasn't actually very relevant for the most part. It was one or two people performing at a computer. They did have a big video wall as well, so that was kind of like the visual kind of anchor. But having multiple loudspeakers across the front of the stage wasn't really useful. However, they did incorporate a 360 system around the whole of the audience, and then the engineer, or the combination of the engineer and the artist, were able to take certain sounds and add excitement to the performance, which was something that was not heard at the other stages as well, so kind of adding new levels of interest and dynamics to the performance. So there's just a few examples, a few pictures, just to kind of spark any conversation, of course, or if you want to ask more questions about any of those afterwards, feel free. But right now we just want to take a little bit of a kind of deep dive and talk more about the world of performing arts. So we could consider soundscape to have a bit more of a kind of natural home in the world of performing arts and theatre. And we want to explore a little bit about why that might be the case. Before we do that, though, we are going to distract ourselves with a little psychoacoustic experiment, because what we want to talk about is this idea of localization. So again, thinking about theatres and thinking about traditional techniques of how the sound designer can use this idea of localization for the audience to understand where the actor is, for example. So what do we mean by localization? We're talking about our own ability to hear where the sound is coming from. So bear with us, we're going to set up a few loudspeakers. And again, we're going to ask you to participate in this. So the red one is the middle one. Bear with us. So we have a couple of things, a couple of tools that we can utilize to help us with this idea of localization. One of those is just level, i.e. just purely volume. The second is time. We've mentioned this already. So with this, we want to explore how we can use time to give us a sense of a localization. And the first thing we're going to do is going to experiment with a psychoacoustic effect known as the Haas effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to play sound through these two loudspeakers. We're going to play the exact same sound. And what I need you to do is to close your eyes.
Not now.
You can now. You can close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Stroke your chin. Now you're a sound engineer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some time to one of these loudspeakers. Okay, so I can do that digitally in the amp using delay. And with your eyes closed, I'm going to incrementally add more and more time. And at the point at which you can hear the same sound twice, an echo, I want you to lift your hand up. So I'll explain that again, because it is a little bit kind of complicated, because as I add time, you are going to start hearing some differences. You're going to start hearing some tonal changes. But what I want you to do is to raise your arm when you start to hear the sound twice, so almost like an echo. Okay? Does that make sense? Is everybody on board with the eyes closed moment? So hopefully you can now hear some sound.
This section contains...
I forgot to say, what we're going to do is we're going to do it once, and then I'll do it again, and then when we're doing it the second time round, I'll call out the amount of time that's being added, okay?
They need to stand up the hand when they hear two voices?
Yes. So, yeah, the aim of the game is don't put your hand up when you start hearing a tonal shift. Put your hand up when you start hearing a distinct echo or two voices together.
Clear.
Okay?
Yep.
We'll try it, and if it is a disaster, we'll just pretend.
This is an experiment.
Yeah.
It's been designed not only to help assess the technical performance of
Okay,
a wide
so this
range
is no
of
time currently.
production equipment, but also to offer the very best available musical, vocal, and effect sources for experimentation and demonstration. This section contains closely mic'd recordings without electronic processing such as limiting or compression. Also, they contain subtle transients which define true high fidelity, and which are often lost in the reverberation and processing of commercial records. These tracks are therefore invaluable for assessing the transient response and fidelity of audio equipment and for experimentation with effects units. Soundcheck is the definitive audio test disc. It contains practical material compiled as a result of careful research and investigation into the needs of studio engineers, audio technicians, serious audiophiles, record producers, and musicians. The disc has been designed not only to help assess the technical performance of a wide range of sound recording and reproduction equipment, but also to offer the very best available musical, vocal, and effect sources for experimentation and demonstration. This section contains closely mic'd recordings without electronic...
Okay, great. I think that worked really well, in fact, because
Yep.
what I'm going to do now is play the next slide. And what we were experiencing there was something that we know as the Haas effect. So an identical sound arriving to us within a 30 millisecond window we will perceive as one sound. Outside of that, we start hearing this distinct echo. And I'll do that experiment again, and I'll call out the delay values, but actually what happened there was at around about 30 milliseconds, hands started to go up, and maybe adding a bit more is a bit more obvious as well. This isn't an exact number, it also depends on things like the frequency content and our own ears as well, and the level difference, so depending on where you are in the room. But what that showed there was that pretty much that 30 millisecond window roughly worked. So we'll do that again, if that's all right. And
It also depends of your ears.
It also depends on your ears.
Your hearing system also is important on that, and this is something different from each of you, but it's like
fidelity of audio.
Okay, so I'll do it one more time. Feel free to close your eyes and even put your hand up again if you want, but I'll call out the value that I'm adding to one of these loudspeakers as we go. So it's going to be a number of milliseconds time. Okay.
Record producers and musicians. The disc has been designed not only to help assess
So this
the
is
technical
0 milliseconds.
of a wide range of sound recording and reproduction equipment, but also to offer the very best
2.5.
musical, vocal, and effect sources for experimentation and demonstration. This section
5.
contains closely mic'd recordings without electronic processing such as limiting or compression.
10.
Also, they contain subtle transients which define true high fidelity, and which are often lost in the reverberation and processing of commercial
15.
records. These tracks are therefore invaluable for assessing the transient response and fidelity of audio
20.
equipment and for experimentation with effects units. Soundcheck is the
25.
definitive audio test disc. It contains practical material compiled as a result of careful research and investigation into the
30.
needs of studio engineers, audio technicians, serious audiophiles, record producers, and musicians.
35.
The disc has been designed not only to help assess the technical performance of a wide range of sound recording and reproduction equipment,
40.
but also to offer the very best available musical, vocal, and effect sources for experimentation and demonstration.
50.
This section contains closely mic'd recordings without electronic processing such as limiting or compression.
70.
Also, they contain subtle transients which define true high fidelity, and which are often lost in the reverberation and processing
90.
of commercial records. These tracks are therefore invaluable for assessing the transient response
And
fidelity of
120.
audio equipment and for experimentation with effects units.
Okay? Does that make sense? Does that kind of come across? And so this principle, we try to satisfy this when it comes to sound system design anyway, regardless of soundscape. We want the arrival of that loudspeaker to match with the arrival of one of these loudspeakers within this window. Otherwise we have that situation where you've paid to hear the show once but you hear it twice, and that's not what we want. So this is the Haas effect. Next up we're going to explore another principle known as the precedence effect. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that this is in fact somebody talking on the stage. So this person is our performer, or it's going to be the same person speaking about all things sound. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar thing, but we're going to start applying varying amounts of delay to the outer loudspeakers. And what I need you to do, again, is to close your eyes and to hold out your hand and to point to where you hear the sound coming from. Okay, so it's kind of split in two. You've got this side of the room kind of working with this side of the system, and then this side of the room working with this side of the system. Because as we learned earlier, of course, with stereo sound reinforcement, it just depends on the nearest loudspeaker you're located towards. So again, we'll do this again. Close your eyes, and I'm going to gradually add delay to these loudspeakers, and I just need you to point to where you hear the sound coming from, and hopefully, Roger, you can just get a sense of the audience and see if it's working and see if we can prove the concept. Okay, so hopefully you hear.
It's clear for everybody what we are going to try? Yeah?
Okay, so eyes closed, holding out your hand. Big breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And here we go.
Without electronic processing such as limiting or compression. Also, they contain subtle transients which define true high fidelity, and which are often lost in the reverberation and processing of commercial records. These tracks are therefore invaluable for assessing the transient response and fidelity of audio equipment and for experimentation with effects units. Soundcheck is the definitive audio test disc. It contains practical material compiled as a result of careful research and investigation into the needs of studio engineers, audio technicians, serious audiophiles, record producers, and musicians.
Okay, so we can do that again. Maybe you can do it with your eyes open, but what generally I noticed, hopefully you saw the same thing as well, everybody started off pointing. If you're on this side of the room, you're pointing at this loudspeaker. If you're on that side of the room, some of you weren't playing a part as much as others, but generally I think people were pointing at that loudspeaker.
And it was nice from here because we start like pointing in this direction. All the guys from the middle like pointing in this direction. The other guys in this part pointing there. And then you started like making this kind of this at the same time. It was so nice. Yeah, the precedence effect.
Thank you.
This one.
Here we go. So yeah, this is demonstrating the precedence effect. So the law of the first wavefront, and that the direction is determined by that first wavefront. So we were simply adding time to each of these loudspeakers until your image shifted here. Why is that? Because this loudspeaker was arriving to your ears first. So your brain, you assumed everything was coming from this place. The value that we ended up at was something around 7 milliseconds. By that point, pretty much everybody had shifted their hand in this direction, which kind of makes sense as well when you think about the speed of sound and 7 milliseconds, roughly 7 foot. It's a little bit like moving this loudspeaker back to here, but we've just done it digitally. So the precedence effect. Should we do it again one more time? You can feel free to have your eyes open as well this time.
This is the typical scenario when we have a talker here and the loudspeaker, the stereo standard, is in front of the talker. And this is something that happens every time. And we are not taking care about these effects. Maybe someone yes, but at the end it's something that happens. And we need to take this into account. And also, it's become more important when we are talking about immersive and try to localize things. Clear?
One more time.
And processing of commercial records.
So this is 0 time.
These tracks are therefore invaluable for assessing the transient response and fidelity of audio equipment
1
for
millisecond.
experimentation with effects units.
2 milliseconds.
Sound check is the definitive
3.
audio test disc. It contains practical
4.
material compiled as a result of careful
5.
research and investigation into the needs
6.
of studio engineers, audio technicians,
7.
serious audiophiles, record producers and musicians.
8.
The disc has been designed not only to help assess the technical performance of a wide range of sound recording and reproduction equipment, but also to offer the very best available musical,
40.
vocal and effects.
So just again, just to demonstrate, 40 milliseconds outside of that HAS window, you heard an echo, but within that first 10 milliseconds, we were very much just using that time to shift the image. Thanks for looking at that. Okay. So the precedent effect as well. So why is this important? Well, thinking about soundscape, thinking about, again, like I say, where it might be considered to be a kind of natural fit with the world of theatre, we just have a little think about how perhaps theatre technicians have been using this idea of the precedence effect and the Haas effect to try and achieve this, even in the absence of something like soundscape. So this is really just proving the point that actually this concept, again, isn't necessarily new. This idea has been around for a very long time, and different ways of using these techniques to try and achieve that. So a very traditional example would be that you'd have your pros system, your upper and lower and front fills as well, and you would just be reinforcing typically like a left-right or a left-center-right system. Perhaps we would play with time, so we could use the front fills, make sure that that is the proceeding wavefront, and the image could shift down so that it didn't sound like my voice was coming from way up in the sky. The next kind of evolution of that would be to use a matrix, maybe on a desk or an external matrix, and set up a whole bunch of vocal zones. And at that point, we are using delay and level on those matrix cross points to try and achieve the sound or the effect of the sound coming from a particular location. And again, that could just be with 2 loudspeakers. Now, if we were to introduce soundscape, we could create vocal zones just by placing objects. So we could have, for instance, 9 objects. Any of the microphones on stage, we could route to those sound objects and achieve the same thing. But best yet is that we could introduce more loudspeakers and have every microphone on stage as an object. And at this point, as we learned earlier, that we are at this point using Soundscape in the DS100 to apply level and delay for each loudspeaker, for each object in real time. And of course, you could go one step further and do things like having real-time tracking, etc., and things like that. So some kind of flagship examples of this, or when it was first taken up, would be Mary Poppins. So the sound designer Paul Gatehouse originally designed this, I think, in Japan, and then this show toured as well. So this was a show that took a soundscape system to multiple theatres. They were there for a week, recreating the show and then going on to the next space as well. MJ the Musical, this started in Broadway and then came to the West End. So this is the work of quite a well-known sound designer called Gareth Owen, and I think we can now skip to a little interview that we did with Gareth, just to hear a little bit more about what soundscape means to him as a sound designer. This is something we've edited down from a longer version that you can find online if you want to, but let's hear a little bit from Gareth about what soundscape means to him, so hopefully this works.
Hi, I'm Steve from D&B Audiotechnik, and today we are here in the heart of London, in the West End, to find out a little bit more about Gareth Owen's sound and what makes him tick in venues like this.
Miranda Priestley is the editor-in-chief of Runway, not to mention a legend. Okay, fellas, key of G, wait, you're saying, who is she?
My name's Gareth Owen. I'm a musical theatre sound designer. I mainly work in New York and London, Broadway and the West End. We're here today at the Devil Wears Prada Theatre, where we have a pretty elaborate sound system installed. The advantages of a soundscape system for the audience, and indeed for the other people involved in the show, are generally quite significant. I remember having a conversation with the director of the musical Come From Away. When we brought the show to London, it was the first show on soundscape in the West End. And we were able to localise the sound of all the different people saying all the different things directly to the performers. And the director said to me, after a while, he said, you know, if I'd have had this technology at the beginning, he said, I would have staged this show differently. He said, because there's so many things that I do in this show to make sure that we know who's talking. So lights come up on people. There are gestures. He said, I have to do that because the sound doesn't. He said, it doesn't draw your attention to where specific people are. He said, I never realised that when we were doing the original production. I also think there are fringe benefits with soundscape that you don't initially realise. For example, if you've got a tracking system and you are locking objects to the people on stage as they move around, what I didn't realise is how many sound effects there are that you actually always want coming from a person. And with soundscape, you can take the sound effects objects, lock them to the performer's trackers, and then wherever they are on stage, if you want the sound effect of somebody snapping their fingers, well, that's a played back recorded sound effect, but you lock it to their object, and it's completely convincing because it's coming exactly from the performer. I think the thing that keeps me coming back, keeps me doing this, keeps me doing the next show and the next show and the next show, is that moment of just standing there and watching the audience have an amazing time.
So, next up, actually, we want to talk a little bit about on-space again, and some of what, I guess, rooms around the world that are captured and stored inside the DS100 itself. So we've already mentioned the show, the Aurora Orchestra, but within the DS100 we have now 9, actually a few more than 9 rooms that have been captured and modelled and are there sitting in the DS100 ready to be used. We also have the ability to do what we call custom rooms. So we can go to a space, we could come to this space, and we could capture the acoustic fingerprint of this space and have that sit inside the DS100 so that it could be used in a different space, a different venue, and literally take this theatre with us to a different space. So we'll have a look at why this might be useful, so perhaps for a rehearsal room, or very importantly for an outdoor venue as well, particularly in the world of classical, or perhaps multi-use space. So the first example of this, again, bringing it back to UK, is King's Place. So Hall 1 is the image at the top, and below is Hall 2. So Hall 1 does have a D&B audiotechnik system in there. Actually, a lot of the time, the musicians ask for it to be turned off, not because they don't like it, but it's because they really like the natural reverberation of the hall. It was a very well-designed space, and playing in there acoustically is actually really rather nice. And downstairs, below that, there is a different space called Hall 2, which is basically kind of like a black box, and they have a soundscape system installed in there. And they utilize this for a number of things. One, they can utilize it for any shows that perhaps are sold out and they do a kind of an overflow seating thing. They can use it for any musicians or orchestras that would typically be rehearsing in Hall 1. They can now rehearse in Hall 2, but with that acoustic fingerprint of Hall 1 with them. And of course they can use it for more experimental or abstract performances as well. Another example of this is in Italy, the Teatro Comunale. Oops, I pressed one too many. Come back. Where what's going on with your laser, Roger? No, where have I gone? No, I've gone too far. Go back. Tech issues. Anyway, I want that picture to come back up. Wait for it there. Okay, so this venue had a massive. It's gone again. You saw the pictures. They had went along 4-year kind of refurbishment. So the orchestra for that space had to go to a completely different space for all of their rehearsals, and what they did was they captured the room, the main hall, and took it with them and used on space to do that. Another example is back again. Dun, da, da, da. I'm just keeping on pressing now. There's a gremlin here. Come on. Here we go. Hey.
Yeah, you're going backwards.
Maybe I'm pressing the wrong button.
Yeah.
That doesn't help. Here we go. You ready? Yay. Over to the States, to Stanford University. So this is actually what's called Modern Medium 2 in Soundscape. And the issue they had is they were finding the main concert hall itself was constantly booked up for shows and programming, which didn't leave enough time for the orchestra to rehearse. So they shifted where they rehearse, and of course, as you can imagine, what I'm going to say is that they captured the main hall and took it with them into the other hall, and they felt completely at home rehearsing in a completely different environment, but with the acoustic signature of the space that they know and love. And of course, they could take that same concept and utilize that for outside concerts as well. So that's quite a good example, really, of course, when playing outside. Pretty much we could consider it to be fairly anechoic, because the amount of reflections are minimal compared to being inside, and that is quite uncomfortable for orchestras. So being able to give them that ability or that sense to feel like they are in a typical concert hall environment makes them feel more comfortable, but of course it adds a great sense of ambience for the audience as well. So that was a little bit about on space and what sits inside the DS100, but now we're going to take a quick look at a large-scale touring application. So this is Bjork Cornucopia, and Roger, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Why not? We had the chance to test our soundscape in this big and, let's say, important tour about Bjork. And I just wanted to mention in deep this because I think it's a good example of scalability and how also to have a look how things are happening in the real life. Okay, that's something interesting. This is why I put these dates, in order to understand that in less than a year we could make it possible to start from the demo to the Bjork about what is soundscape, and to make all the preppings and all the stuff to go to the European tour in less than a year. You can imagine this kind of gigs are quite complex in terms of everything, and also I think less than 1 year is something quite nice. And this was the first demo that we did to Bjork in one church. We ran the church. We put some loudspeakers, not big system, but as I said, since soundscape can be scalable, this was something that works and also brings to Bjork the ideas of easily understands how soundscape it works, and also if Bjork knows how soundscape it works, then she can create and prepare the materials for that, because she knows the tools that we can play. And then also, I think...
This is a picture of the Starlight Express.
The musical, isn't it?
Yes, this is the Starlight Express, and the reason that this picture is in there, this is a Gareth Owen show.
Okay, yeah.
And for this, Gareth had, in fact, and his team had designed and built their own control software. This was quite early on in Soundscape's journey, and it was called OnSnap. And what we actually did was, this was the first licensing of this show control that then Bjork used on their tour to capture and manipulate all of that control data.
That means it's something nice, because Soundscape is quite flexible, as we said this morning, and they can Gareth Owen create their own software in order to control the soundscape in their way. And the first license, as I said, Jack, was sold in the Bjork's cornucopias. Then Bjork went or rent like a lighthouse in the middle of Iceland, far away from everything, and she built his small system there to start recording, playing, mixing, creating, and she spent like 2 months there creating the show. And then they moved to the big venue in a rehearsal room just to introduce the band and start making some, like, now they, and because the scalability, they can easily transform from the lighthouse to a rehearsal room. And easily, I don't want to go in deep on that, but you can imagine we had like the playback, the effects, then we have the live channels, all the instruments. Everything went to in terms of audio and Dante, that's the green lines, went to the SD7, then through the orange box, we go through 2 DS100 in order to have the backup and also have the program. And then we use an autograph in order to go to the DS10, that is our also product, to make a bridge between Dante and digital audio. And then the signal goes directly to the amplifiers and then go to the speakers. This, in terms of audio and Dante, and also in terms of control, there were many data that went also through all this chain, also from the playback, also from the NSNAP, this software to control the position of the objects, and then those information goes directly to both DS100 in order to send and control all the parameters that are in the soundscape. Then they moved to a bigger rehearsal room. Yeah, remember scalability, then easily go from a small rehearsal to the big rehearsal. In London, they start like playing and configuring everything, and they went to New York in the shed in order that it's completely different. I mean, the shed is something quite big, and I will jump because we are running out of time, but they wanted to implement, I show some pictures here, a system like this. This is our modeling software, and you can see all the loudspeakers. And in this case, we plan like a complete 360 system there with many hangs, also with a lot of loudspeakers. I think there were like a glass wall here, isn't it? I think here there were a glass wall, and this is why we have like also a 360 there. And then the tour went to Mexico. They had not a tour, they had a show in Mexico. This was like a more big space, and also they wanted to escalate that. The 360, also there you can see the loudspeaker on the hanging, and yeah, that means easily they can adapt their designs, their recordings, their everything, their movements in a different sizes of place. But then arrived the way or the time when they need to, this is how they scale easily using the mappings, but we are running out of time, but we arrived to the European tour. And here we need to consider more a different criteria, because a tour means that you have to build easily, then dismantle easily. You cannot make it quite complex. Or at least you need to control how the complexity is going high, and also how to solve that in order to find a balance and not to exceed, because then will be unfeasible. Yeah. And this is why this is something that also takes into the old needs to take care, and then make or put into the table the question if we need the 360 or not. It's necessary for what we are wanting, or we can avoid that. And this was something and we did some tests in order that, and also we use our software to see how you can see here, how a small box is not a small box, but the point source that it's like near 40 kilogram box, but how just box around can cover properly in order, in this case, to create some kind of space thing. That means the plan was not to place any object, because everything happens on stage, but was to create some kind of place or these effects. At the end, also they consider, because you need to hang more hands and more arrays, and that also become quite complexity. And this is why they thought about putting a mother truss, and then all the arrays hang directly, and they can control individually, easily go down with all the PA. Also, they have like a rolling stage, and they need also to take care about that. You can see here the rolling stage. That means when you are in tour, everything gets much more complex, and you cannot go in this way that the system provokes you to be late or have a lot of troubles or problems, or you need like the double of time in order to set up the same thing. Yeah? Some pictures, nice pictures. Regarding the control, and this is a show running in I don't know where is this, but
London.
In London. Yeah? I think we have some videos talking, Björn talking about her experience in this tour, and the collaboration between DMB and Björk.
We are currently in New York, the Shed. It's a unique space, very high ceiling, extremely high ceiling. When we put the soundscape system in, we've been really pleasantly surprised at what we've managed to achieve. I worked with Björk on the last run we did, which was for Utopia, and this is kind of like an expanded show, especially from an audio point of view.
We spend a lot of time making sure that there will be synchronicity between the live music and the live visuals. So for me, cornucopia is kind of the celebration or the execution of that.
Doing the show where we mix kind of stuff from every album, it's very interesting to try to find a path and try to get those emotions out correctly without having an obstructed flow. I was expecting to be disappointed when I first heard it, but it was so good. Just the idea of having a live show where you can place objects in real time that actually works. I've been super impressed by how it scales as well, and I can see it definitely becoming a part of the future in live sound, both for these kind of shows. You can actually make virtual acoustics, which is mind-blowing.
I started thinking about sound in a very 360 way, I spent a couple of months in a lighthouse in Iceland, taking every little noise and mixing, writing movements for it. Just sonically, we spent weeks and months. I personally feel like it's the most gorgeous sound that I've ever heard in a room.
Our playback rig has expanded from about 20 channels to like a full 56-way MADI stream, just in order to give us the option to use objects in a different way. There's moments in the show that are very quiet and there's a lot of space and the sound spinning all around you, and you're in a complete chaos, but that's by design. It's not always like a straight theatrical design might be.
The sounds would be like swirling around them and coming from all different directions. You could visibly see some of the people in the audience react to that and jump in the seats.
I'm really happy and honoured to be a part of this, and I'm super proud of what we managed to achieve.
Yeah, the future of sound is definitely heading in this direction, this object-based, fully immersive sound. Audiences are going to come to expect, and stereo is going to be an old thing down the lineup.
Perfect ending. You pressed the laser?
No.
Okay, well that's all right
Yeah,
anyway.
fine. We miss the last words of Björk that said that the collaboration was something amazing. And I will take this because I think for us also to have the chance to collaborate with this kind of artists, also it's like a win-to-win situation. And I think it's quite nice also to keep evolving in this way, like a collaboration between artists, and because as a summary I would say that the technology is there. We can do many things, but now we need the connection between the artist, the production world, to this, let's say, the tool. And this connection needs to happen. And it's happening now. We have this Woman Festival.
Yeah, I think we've...
4 minutes.
Yeah, and we want to end with some soundscape content as well. So I'll just quickly mention this because I think it follows on nicely from what you were just saying. This was... WOMAD is the World of Music, Art and Dance. It's a festival that happens in the UK, but also in various countries around the world. And for the artists in the room here, because I'm sure there are some, this was where we really tried to collaborate with not only the artist, but the programmer of the festival, as well as local venues as well, to try and connect the industry in a way that could hopefully demonstrate how we can make these kind of shows more accessible. So for instance, of course, you would understand that there's a little bit more time it takes to prepare a show like this in the first instance, particularly as it might be new technology. But if we can split that over the cost of, say for instance, a few shows where we can connect a local venue then with the festival, we can start to understand and maybe make a bit more sense of how this could work, because ultimately for this to be successful, we want it to make sense for the artists and for the venues as well. So I'll just play a little snippet of a video that just captures the perspective of one of the artists that was programmed for the soundscape stage at WOMAD in 2024, but also in partnership with one of the local venues nearby called Dare Shack, which has a soundscape system installed in that space as well. So we will play this little snippet and then we will end with some soundscape content before lunch.
Today I'm at Dare Shack in Bristol, where there's a soundscape system, and we're experimenting with ideas for a show I'm doing at WOMAD on the soundscape stage. You know, I'm sort of thinking, what wild things can we do with our instruments that will translate well into an immersive experience for the audience? It kind of blew my mind a little bit that we could give the same instructions that I would to musicians to a sound engineer, and that they could make a sort of three-dimensional immersive experience for the audience.
Okay.
Yeah. After the video that we will show now as end of this morning session, I just want to remind you that tomorrow we will have also more sessions about immersive. I think will be quite interesting. And then for sure we will be around here. If you have any doubt, any question, please feel free to come to us. Okay? Then enjoy and thank you very much for the passion and to be here and for everything.
Thank you.
Everything owes its existence solely and completely to sound.